The sun was sinking behind the red cliffs, staining the dust in gold when the stranger rode into Hollow Creek. His horse was lean, his eyes dark, and his silence heavy. Folks at the saloon didn't know what to make of him. The man looked Apache, but carried himself like someone who had seen both sides of the frontier. The piano stopped when he entered. Boots froze mid-step. Even the barkeep, old Jeb, pretended to wipe glasses just to get a better look. The stranger didn't flinch at the stares. He just asked quietly, "Water, for me and the horse." "Name's Tohani," he said after a pause, his voice deep. Unhurried Dad, it wasn't long before someone mentioned her name. They always did. Elara May, a drunk ranch hand mumbled from a corner, his words laced with both desire and disbelief. "Ain't a man in this town who wouldn't give his week's pay to spend a night with her." That earned a few chuckles, but not the kind that came from amusement, more like nervous awe. Tohani's dark eyes flickered. "And she lets them?" he asked. The barkeep leaned closer, lowering his voice. "She ain't what you're thinking, stranger. Elara May's different." Tohani frowned slightly. "Different how?" The old man hesitated, then said, "Every man in Hollow Creek wants her, sure, but not the way you think. They line up outside her house like pilgrims, waiting for their turn. Not for sin, but for something else. Something they can't explain. And when they come out, they're never the same." The saloon went quiet again. Only the wind hummed outside. Elara May lived on the edge of town, in a white wooden house with wildflowers crawling up its porch rails. She was 30, young enough to be desired, old enough to be feared. Her past was a mystery no one could solve. Some said she was the widow of a preacher. Others whispered she'd been married to an outlaw. A few swore she was cursed out at dusk. Men would stand in line by her gate, cowhands, sheriffs, even drifters passing through, all waiting in silence. When she opened her door, they entered alone. And when they left, they looked as if they had seen ghosts. Some wept, some smiled. Some quit drinking forever. Tohani didn't believe in town gossip. He had seen lies bloom like weeds among white men's towns. But something about the way the barkeep spoke stirred curiosity in him. "What happens inside?" he asked quietly. "No one knows," Jeb replied. "She don't charge money. Don't ask nothin'. But whatever happens in there, it changes a man." That night, Tohani camped near the river, but sleep never came. The coyotes howled in the distance, and the stars shimmered like ancient watchers. He thought of her, this woman who held men's hearts in silence. In his people's lore, such women were called spirit bearers, healers who could draw pain out of broken souls. But this was not Apache land anymore. Hollow Creek had been swallowed by greed and whiskey. He doubted a true spirit bearer could survive here. Still, when morning came, his curiosity led him to her house. She stood on the porch, watering a dying rose bush. Her hair, the color of worn copper, caught the light like fire. Her eyes met his, calm, knowing. "You're not from here," she said softly. "No," Tohani answered. "I came to understand why this town speaks your name like a prayer." A faint smile curved her lips. "Then you'll have to see for yourself." He expected her to invite him in, but she didn't. Instead, she handed him the watering can. "Help me keep them alive," she murmured. "They've stopped blooming since the last storm." He knelt, pressing the can's spout into the soil. The scent of earth rose, heavy, sweet, almost sacred. For a long while neither spoke. Then, as the silence deepened, she said quietly, "Every man who comes here brings something dying, a heart, a memory, a sin. I don't heal them. I just make them remember what it felt like to be human again." Tohani looked up at her, startled. "And what about you?" She smiled sadly. "Me? I stopped being human a long time ago." The wind rustled through the flowers, and for a brief second he thought he saw tears in her eyes. But when he blinked, she was already turning away. He watched her walk back into the house, the screen door creaking shut behind her, leaving only the whisper of petals in the wind. That night, for the first time in years, Tohani dreamed. The next morning, the town woke early. Hollow Creek always did after a restless night. The desert wind carried gossip like tumbleweed, and by noon, everyone knew the Apache stranger had spoken to Elara May. Old Jeb muttered it to the blacksmith. The blacksmith told the preacher's wife. By evening, the rumor had spread from one end of Main Street to the other. The Apache's gonna be next in line. But Tohani hadn't gone back. Not yet. He sat outside town beneath a mesquite tree, sharpening his knife and thinking of her words. I stopped being human a long time ago. They echoed in his head like a riddle. What could make a woman say that? He'd seen death war and the spirits of his ancestors in dreams, but never a woman who could pull sorrow out of men and send them away changed. At sundown, he returned to town. The line outside Elara Mai's house was already forming. Cowhands, a preacher's son, even the marshal. Each man waited quietly, eyes lowered, hats in hand. The air around them felt heavy, like a church before a funeral. Tohani leaned against a fence, watching. None of the men spoke. When the door opened, Elara May stood there in a soft white dress, her copper hair loose. Her face carried neither joy nor sadness, only a calm acceptance, like someone carrying a burden too long. One by one, she let the men in. And each time, when they came out, their faces looked different. Some wept silently. Some smiled as if freed from an unseen chain. Tohani's instincts told him this was not witchcraft, it was grief. The same kind he'd seen in soldiers after a battle when they begged for forgiveness from the earth itself. When the last man left and the lamps inside dimmed, Tohani approached the porch. He didn't knock. He just stood there, letting the cool desert wind brush against his bare chest. Elara's voice came from the shadows. You shouldn't be here tonight. I've seen enough death to know when souls are crying, he said. You draw pain out of men. I want to know how. She stepped into the moonlight, her eyes reflecting it like water. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me. For a long while, she said nothing. Then she motioned him inside. The house smelled of sage and candle wax. The walls were filled with portraits, dozens of men, painted in oil, each one captured mid-smile or mid-tear. Tohani stopped in front of one. These men, they're the ones who came here, she said softly. Every one of them left something behind, a memory, a wound, a regret. I paint what they can't carry anymore. He turned to her slowly. You take their pain and keep it for yourself. She nodded. It's the only way they can go on living. Tohani's hands clenched. That's not healing. That's dying in pieces. A faint smile crossed her lips. That's exactly what I am doing. She led him into another room. There, on a small table, burned dozens of candles. In front of each flame lay a small object, a child's boot, a soldier's badge, a silver locket, a wedding ring. These are their memories, she whispered. They come to me because they can't bear them anymore. I take the weight so they can live again. Tohani looked around, his heart heavy. And who takes yours? For the first time, her composure cracked. Her eyes glistened. No one. He stepped closer. Why do you do it? She turned away, her shoulders trembling. Because once, long ago, I couldn't save the one man I loved. He died because of me. Since then, I've tried to give others the peace I couldn't give him. Tohani's breath caught. So that's your punishment. It's my choice, she whispered. My penance. Outside, thunder rumbled over the desert. The first drops of rain in months tapped against the window pane. Elara turned toward him. "You should go, Tohani. My pain isn't meant for you." But he didn't move. "Maybe your soul has carried enough. Maybe it's time someone took the weight from you." Her eyes widened, not in fear but disbelief. "You don't understand what you're offering." "I do," he said. "I've seen spirits bound by sorrow before. I know what happens when one heart tries to save too many." The candles flickered violently. A gust of wind swept through the house, snuffing several flames at once. In that trembling light, Elara whispered, "Then you'll see what I truly am." The storm rolled in heavy that night. Lightning streaked across the mesa, lighting up Hollow Creek in brief flashes of silver. Inside Elara May's house, the candles flickered violently, their flames bowing under unseen breath. Tohani stood still, watching her as thunder rumbled over the horizon. He had faced death, spirits, and war, but never a woman who carried the sorrow of so many souls within her eyes. Elara's voice broke the silence. "What you see here isn't of this world, Tohani. These men come to me not for comfort of flesh, but for the weight they can't confess to their God." He frowned. "You speak as if you are their confessor." Her lips trembled into a half-smile. "Maybe I am, but I'm no saint. I was never blessed by any church. My gift came the day I died." Tohani's eyes darkened. "Died?" She nodded slowly. 5 years ago. The preacher's son, James Harlow. He was my husband." Her hand brushed against a locket on the table, a silver one, tarnished by time. "He was kind, pure. We were married in this very house. But on our wedding night, he learned what I had been before, that I wasn't a virgin." Her eyes glistened. "He rode off into the canyon storm that same night. They found his horse 2 days later, but never his body." She took a trembling breath. "I blamed myself. I begged the Lord to take my life in exchange for his. And he did. For 3 days I was gone, no breath, no heartbeat. When I woke, I could feel other people's pain as if it were my own. Since then, the men of Hollow Creek come here, all burdened with their sins, their regrets. I take them from them one by one." Tohani stared at her, his heart pounding with disbelief. "You mean, you carry their souls?" "Not their souls," she said softly. "Just their sorrow." The wind howled through the broken window pane, scattering the candlelight. Tohani stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the floorboards. "Your gift or your curse, it's killing you." Her eyes flicked to his. "I know. You said you stopped being human. Is this what you meant?" "Yes. The more sorrow I take, the less I feel alive." He walked around the room, studying the portraits. Each painted face carried emotion, pain, relief, hope, as if their spirits had been trapped in color. "Why not stop?" Her answer came like a whisper. "Because they still come." Lightning flashed again, revealing tears streaking her face. She turned away from him, hands trembling. "You shouldn't have come here, Tohani. You don't belong to their world." He stepped closer. "Then what world do I belong to? My people's lands are gone. Their spirits wander. Maybe that's why I was drawn here, to yours." Her breath caught. "You think this is fate?" He nodded once. "Everything that breathes under the same sky is tied by the wind. Maybe I was meant to help you let go." Elara's lips parted, a faint laugh breaking through her tears. "You don't know what it means to take this from me. You'd be walking into a storm no man can survive." Tohani's voice was steady, his tone that of a man who had made peace with death. "I've already walked through one." A sudden crash of thunder shook the walls. Several candles went out, plunging the room into shadow. Only the faint glow from one remaining flame lit their faces. Elara's eyes were wide now, shimmering like pools of copper. "If you really wish to see, then you must touch what others fear. She reached out her hand. Take my hand, Tohani. But understand this, once you see what I've seen, you'll never be the same again. He hesitated only a moment. Then, slowly, he placed his rough, calloused palm into hers. The world around him vanished. He felt a surge of heat, as if fire burned beneath his skin. Screams echoed in his ears, men weeping, confessing, dying. He saw flashes, a soldier holding his dead child, a rancher drowning his guilt in whiskey, a preacher begging forgiveness for a sin unspeakable. All their pain poured through him like molten iron. He staggered back, gasping. Elara caught him, whispering, "Now you understand." Tohani's body trembled, his breath ragged. "You've been living this every day." She nodded, her voice breaking. "Every night." He looked at her then, truly looked, and saw that her beauty wasn't mortal at all. Her skin seemed faintly luminous, her presence both sorrowful and sacred. "You're not cursed," he said softly. "You're the bridge between the living and the lost." Tears welled in her eyes. "Then why do I feel so damned?" Tohani took her hand again, firmer this time. "Because no one ever came to carry you out of the dark." Outside, the storm began to fade. The first silver of dawn broke over Hollow Creek, washing the house in pale light. Elara's eyes lifted toward the window, her voice a whisper. "Maybe it's time to let go?" he asked. She nodded. "To be free." The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled of storm and sorrow. Dawn crept through the cracked window of Elara May's house, soft and gray, painting her face in fragile light. Tohani sat across from her, silent. He had seen many strange things in his life, spirits whispering in the wind, ancestors guiding the lost, but what he had witnessed inside her soul went beyond that. It was pain turned into a living thing. Elara poured him coffee, her hands trembling slightly. "You shouldn't have done it," she said. "Now the pain has seen you." He looked up slowly. "Pain does not scare me. It's part of living." Her eyes softened. "Not this kind. This one follows you. It remembers." Tohani didn't answer. He simply stared into his cup, watching the steam curl like a spirit rising. Outside, the town was waking, roosters crowing, wagons rolling, people beginning another day without knowing what haunted the edge of their quiet lives. By noon, Hollow Creek was buzzing. Word spread that the Apache had been seen inside Elara May's home through the storm, and no one had seen either of them leave. Some said he'd gone mad. Others claimed he'd tried to exorcise her. The preacher's wife whispered to her husband, "Maybe she's finally found someone who can end her curse." But no one dared go near the house. Not even the sheriff. That afternoon, Elara led Tohani to the canyon edge behind her property, a lonely, wind-carved place where rocks held echoes of old cries. Below, the desert stretched endless and golden, dotted with cactus and memory. "This is where James vanished," she said softly. "They say he fell from these cliffs the night he rode away. But I never believed it." Tohani knelt, touching the ground. The sand felt cold, heavy, as if soaked with grief. He closed his eyes and whispered an Apache prayer for the restless. "Elara," he said after a moment, "the storm that night, it wasn't meant for him. It was meant for you." Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" He opened his eyes. "Some souls don't leave quietly. If his spirit died in anger or betrayal, it could have bound itself to yours. That's why you feel the sorrow of men. It's his guilt, feeding through you." Her breath hitched. "You're saying James is still here?" "Yes," Tohani said. "But he's not the man you remember. He's become something else, something made of pain." That night, Tohani prepared a ritual. He gathered sage, burned cedar, and drew symbols in ash upon the wooden floor. Elara watched him, uncertain. I haven't prayed in years, she said softly. You don't need to, he replied. Just be willing to face him. When the final candle was lit, he took her hands and guided her to kneel before the fire. The smoke rose, thick and swirling, filling the room with a scent that was both holy and haunting. Tohani began to chant, words older than the town, older than English itself. The air grew colder. The flames bent inward. Then came the sound, a slow, hollow breath. Elara froze. Did you hear that? Tohani nodded, his eyes never leaving the fire. Don't fear. Speak his name. Her lips quivered. James. The room trembled. The portraits on the wall rattled. And from the far corner, a shape began to take form, faint at first, then sharper, human, dressed in tattered black. His face was half shadow, half sorrow. Elara, the figure whispered. She gasped, tears spilling down her cheeks. James, is it really you? Tohani stood beside her, every muscle tense. The spirit turned toward him, eyes burning with something between hatred and longing. She took everything from me, the ghost said, voice cracking like dry wood. My faith, my pride, my peace. Elara cried out, I loved you. You were the one who couldn't forgive. The spirit's voice grew louder. You broke the vow before it began. You brought shame into my home. Tohani stepped between them. Enough. Shame dies when truth is spoken. You left her in anger, and that anger chained her soul. The spirit hissed, the air turning icy. She belongs to me. Tohani's voice rose with power. Not anymore. He grasped Elara's hand tightly and chanted louder, calling on the desert wind, the ancestors, and the great spirit that guards all wounded hearts. The spirit screamed, a sound of thunder and grief, before bursting into a storm of ashes that vanished into the air. Then silence. Elara collapsed against Tohani, weeping. The candles flickered back to calm. The house, for the first time in years, felt warm. He's gone, she whispered. Tohani held her close. No, he's free. And now, so are you. But deep in the fading echo of the wind, he heard something else, faint, distant, like a promise. This is not over. The sun had barely risen over the cliffs when Elara woke to the soft rustle of wind through the canyon. She had fallen asleep beside the dying embers of the fire, wrapped in Koda's worn blanket. The world around her felt heavy, as if the desert itself was holding its breath. Koda was already awake. He stood at the edge of the cliff, shirtless as always, his long black hair whipping behind him, sunlight glinting off his tribal necklaces. The red paint on his chest symbols of protection seemed to glow faintly. He looked like a vision carved from the earth. But there was something different in his posture this morning, a quiet determination, as though he had already decided his fate before dawn. Elara rose and joined him, her bare feet crunching softly on the gravel. You didn't sleep, she said gently. Koda didn't turn. Sleep is for those who have finished their promises. She frowned. And yours? He looked at her then, his dark eyes deep and endless. Mine is still bound to you. The words struck her like a wind across the chest. She wanted to ask what he meant, but before she could, he turned and began walking toward the canyon path that led east. She followed. They journeyed in silence for hours. The land changed from red rock to open plains where tall grass whispered in the breeze. A lone eagle soared above them, tracing slow circles in the sky. By midday, they reached a place where an old wooden cross stood half buried in the dirt. Koda stopped there. His expression turned solemn. Elara recognized the place. It was where she had first met him, bleeding and half-conscious, a storm raging that night. She remembered how he had protected her from the men who chased her, how he had taken a bullet meant for her heart. "What is this place to you?" she asked quietly. Koda knelt beside the cross, brushing dust off the wood. "This was once my brother's resting place," he said. "He was betrayed by men who wanted gold from this land. I swore I'd never let their spirits rest until I made it right." Elara lowered her eyes. "So this is your promise?" Koda nodded slowly. "But the earth has a cruel memory. It never forgets blood. It demands more in return." The wind picked up, sweeping through the grass like a ghostly whisper. Elara reached out and touched his arm. "You've already done enough. You've protected me, saved me, guided me here. Maybe your promise is already fulfilled." Koda's muscles tensed beneath her touch. "No," he said firmly. "There is still something left. Something that must end before the spirits will release me." She stepped back, confused. "Release you, Koda? What are you saying?" He stood and turned toward her, his eyes glistening with something between pain and peace. "I am not meant to walk beyond this sunrise," he said. "My soul has been bound to the promise I made long ago to protect the one who carries the light." Elara shook her head, tears welling up. No, you can't mean." He took her hands gently, pressing them to his chest where his heart beat strong and steady. "The old spirits gave me strength when I was dying that night. They said I would walk again, but only until my promise was complete. I didn't understand then, but now I do." She pulled away, shaking. "I won't let you go. There has to be another way." Koda smiled faintly, sadness and calm in his voice. "The desert doesn't take what it doesn't need, and it never lies." He took a deep breath, then whispered a chant in his native tongue. The wind shifted. The ground trembled faintly beneath their feet. Elara clutched his arm as a faint glow rose from the earth, swirling around him like mist. The tattoos on his skin began to shimmer. "Koda!" she cried. "Please don't leave me yet." He turned his gaze to her one last time, his voice soft but clear. "Elara, I will always walk beside you in the wind and the fire. But promises, once kept, must set the soul free." Then the light swallowed him whole. When it faded, he was gone, leaving behind only his turquoise pendant, still warm in her trembling hands. Elara fell to her knees, tears falling onto the sacred soil. The wind whispered through the canyon once more, carrying a single word on its breath: promise. The desert was silent after Koda vanished. The wind that once carried his chants had grown still, and the land itself seemed to mourn. Elara sat where he had stood, clutching the turquoise pendant until her fingers ached. Hours passed, then days. She wandered through the canyon aimlessly, half alive, speaking to the wind as though it still carried his voice. Each sunrise mocked her with light she could not feel. But on the third night, the desert stirred again. A low hum rose from the earth, a vibration deep and steady. Elara woke to it, heart pounding. The turquoise pendant around her neck pulsed faintly with light. She followed the glow through the dry ravine, her steps uncertain. The moon was high, pale and cold, when she reached a hollow beneath the cliffs. There, she saw the fire Koda had once built. It burned again, though no hands had lit it. The air was warm and thick with the scent of sage. And then his voice. "Elara?" Her breath caught. She spun around, eyes wide, tears already forming. "Koda?" The flames shifted, and from within them a figure emerged, not flesh, not ghost, but something between. Koda, his form shimmering like smoke, eyes deep and knowing. Elara fell to her knees. "I thought you were gone," she whispered. "I am," he said softly, his voice layered with wind and flame. "But promises, they do not die, not when hearts still remember." She reached out, her hand trembling, but her fingers passed through his form like mist. "Why did you come back?" Koda looked toward the horizon where the moonlight brushed the hills. because the truth you seek has not yet been told. You must know why the men of the town desire you so." Elara froze. That secret whispered behind closed doors, spoken in taverns, had followed her all her life. Men who had seen her, men who should have despised her, all wanted her. She never understood why. Her voice trembled. "You know?" Koda nodded slowly. "The spirits showed me before I crossed. Your blood carries the mark of the old Sun tribe, the women of light. Long before the white man came, they were the chosen healers. Their touch brought peace, their presence stirred desire, not from lust, but from the heart's hunger for truth." Elara's eyes widened. "You're saying I was born with it?" "Yes," he said, his expression gentle. "It is not sin that draws them. It is memory. You remind them of what they lost, the purity of soul they buried beneath greed and war. But they do not understand it, so they mistake it for desire." Tears filled her eyes. "All these years, I thought it was shame. I thought something was wrong with me." Koda stepped closer, the firelight passing through his form, making him glow like an ember. "There is nothing impure about you, Elara. The spirits call you the keeper of warmth. Your gift is rare, but dangerous in the world of men who have forgotten what warmth truly means." She bowed her head, sobbing softly. "Then why did I lose everything? My home, my peace, my name?" "Because," Koda said quietly, "the world destroys what it cannot own." His words sank into her heart like the first rain after drought. Elara rose slowly, her face lit by firelight and moon. "If this gift is real, what am I supposed to do now?" Koda's gaze softened. "You will heal what I could not. You will go back to the town, not as the woman they whisper about, but as the truth they denied. There are souls waiting for you, even among those who wronged you. Some are sick with guilt, some with loss. You will be their light." She hesitated. "And you?" Koda smiled faintly, his outline flickering. "My promise is done, but yours is just beginning." As his figure began to fade, the wind rose again, swirling around her with warmth. His voice echoed one last time. "Whenever you feel the desert wind touch your hair, know that I walk beside you still." The fire dimmed. The night grew quiet. Elara stood alone beneath the stars, but for the first time she did not feel lost. She lifted the turquoise pendant to her lips and whispered, "Then I will keep your promise, Koda." And with that, she turned toward the east, the town that had once cursed her, ready to face them all, not with shame, but with truth. The sun was setting when Elara rode back toward the town she once fled from. The horizon burned with streaks of orange and crimson, painting the land like the inside of a wounded heart. Her horse's hooves drummed against the earth, steady and determined. Around her neck hung Koda's turquoise pendant, glowing faintly as if it pulsed with his heartbeat still. The town of Red Hollow came into view, its buildings half swallowed by dust and silence. Windows shuttered. Doors half open. The saloon sign swung crookedly in the wind. It was the same town that had once cursed her name, branded her as a woman of shame, not pure, they said, not worthy. Yet every man had secretly longed for her warmth. Unable to explain why, as Elara dismounted and stepped into the street, heads began to turn. The few townsfolk who still lingered outside fell silent. Her dress was travel-worn, her boots covered in red dust, but there was something about her presence, radiant, calm, unafraid, that made even the boldest men lower their gaze. "Is that her?" Someone whispered. "She came back," murmured another. From the saloon doorway, Sheriff Cole emerged, his gray beard catching the light. He had been one of the many who condemned her years ago, calling her a curse in woman's form. But now, even he seemed uncertain. "Elara," he said slowly, his voice raspy. "You got a lot of nerve coming back here." She met his gaze, unflinching. "No, I have a promise to keep." The words carried power. The air shifted as though the wind itself paused to listen. The sheriff frowned. "What promise?" She stepped forward, pulling the turquoise pendant from her neck and holding it out so all could see. The stone shimmered, casting soft blue light across the dusty street. "A man of the Apache saved my life," she said, her voice clear and strong. "He gave me this. His name was Koda. He told me the truth you've all been too afraid to hear." The crowd stirred uneasily. She continued, "You think you wanted me because of sin or beauty. But it wasn't that. It was because your souls were cold and mine carried warmth. That warmth was never meant to shame anyone. It was meant to heal." Her eyes glistened as she looked over the crowd. "Every one of you came to me with hunger, not of the body, but of the spirit. I see it now. You weren't desiring me. You were remembering what you lost: love, kindness, peace." The silence deepened. Even the wind seemed to listen. A woman's voice broke through a frail, trembling one. "Then, what are you?" Elara smiled faintly. "A keeper of warmth," she said. "That's what Koda called me. A bridge between light and the lost." The sheriff swallowed hard. His eyes softened as if years of guilt pressed down on him at once. "We wronged you," he said hoarsely. "We all did." Elara stepped closer and placed a hand on his arm. "Then make it right. Not for me, for yourselves. Forgive what you cannot understand." And just then, a wind swept through the town, not harsh but warm, carrying the scent of sage and firewood. The turquoise pendant flared bright blue dot from beyond the hill. A hawk cried sharp, clear, familiar. Elara's eyes filled with tears. She knew that sound. Koda. The townsfolk turned their faces upward, watching the birds circle once above her before soaring into the sun. A hush fell over Red Hollow, and for the first time in many years, peace settled on that dust-covered street. That night, Elara stayed in the old chapel at the town's edge. The people brought food, blankets, even flowers, small gestures of redemption. And when dawn came, the entire town gathered outside, waiting. Elara stood before them in the morning light, holding Koda's pendant. "The desert doesn't take what it doesn't need," she said softly. "It gave me back my truth. Now I give it to you." She placed the pendant on the chapel's altar, the turquoise glowing one last time before fading into stillness. The people bowed their heads. The sheriff whispered, "Rest easy, Koda." And Elara smiled through her tears. "He already does." When she walked out into the rising sun, the wind brushed her hair. Warm and tender like a hand she knew. She looked back once toward the desert and whispered, "Your promise is safe, my warrior." Then she walked on, her figure bathed in golden light, as if the sun itself bent low to honor her. And somewhere far beyond sight, carried by the morning wind, came Koda's voice, soft, eternal, free. The promise kept. The promise fulfilled.